Welcome to Twists of Life, where every story has an unexpected turn. Stories of joy and sorrow, hope and redemption, just like the life we all live. Make yourself comfortable. It's time to begin. Sarah rushed through the rooms, hastily gathering things that came to hand. Her breathing was ragged. She was very nervous. Her supervisor had just called, asking why she had suddenly decided to leave so abruptly. Of course, they let her go immediately, but questions poured in from everyone, and she couldn't explain anything right now. And anyway, she didn't want to tell anyone anything about what had happened. Sarah had met her husband when she was doing her internship at a medical facility. Feelings overwhelmed them suddenly, and they didn't resist them, marrying soon after. After she started working at the outpatient clinic, they decided not to have children for the time being. She had only just started working, and then somehow there wasn't time for children, although she hinted about it to her husband. Sarah became lost in memories, and tears of hurt and anger immediately welled up in her eyes. And it was all because of her friend. Yesterday she found out that she wasn't a friend to her at all. Sarah worked extra shifts at the clinic, staying on duty overnight, and yesterday she was supposed to stay for a full 24 hours, but her shift was canceled, and Sarah happily rushed home to surprise her husband. But when she quietly entered the apartment, she heard a woman's laughter. "You surprise me every time. I really don't know what you'll prepare next." It was the voice of her friend Jessica. And her husband Michael replied to her, "You know, you always motivate me. I think about you every minute. I want you to be happy. I'm ready to do anything so you won't be disappointed in me, my dear. You are my cosmos. I'm ready to do anything for your smile and kiss." Sarah slowly backed away towards the front door. She had heard enough words to understand what was happening. The sound of kissing was audible from the room, and she didn't want to see what was happening in there. She quietly left the apartment without locking the door behind her. She spent the night at the medical facility without closing her eyes, and now she had come home to pack her things. She wanted to disappear, and during the night, she figured out exactly where to go. A relative had left her a small house in a tiny settlement. Nobody knew about it because Sarah had left the countryside years ago to live with her father in another town after her mother passed away. Only when the relative passed away did she travel for the funeral, learning that she had left the house to her. It was a decent little house that had been empty since her grandmother's passing all this time. Sarah decided to go there. All that remained was to pack the necessary things and documents. Nobody would find her there. She didn't want her husband or her best friend to know anything about her whereabouts. Let them think she's missing or that something happened to her. "There is no more of my soul," the woman whispered quietly, feeling empty. An hour later, she had gathered everything she needed. She stopped in the middle of the room, looking around the surroundings. She felt that she would never return here again. Here she had been happy, and here she had learned about the actions of the two people dearest to her. This place was no longer her safe haven. Now it was a dirty swamp where disgusting things happened. Sarah felt nauseous and hurried to leave the apartment, to walk away into nowhere. 2 days later, she was already in the small settlement. Before boarding the plane, she threw away her SIM card and bought a new one. She didn't want to be bothered by calls from her husband, her friend, or anyone else. If necessary, she would call the medical facility herself to inform them whether or not she would return to work. But while she was flying, a thought increasingly troubled her. Should she give up her medical career altogether? The actions of her loved ones had pulled the rug out from under her, and Sarah didn't know what to do next. She only understood that she wanted to radically change her way of life to recover. Now she was walking along the railway tracks with a suitcase. She had arrived in the settlement by bus, but there was still a long walk to the house. A local resident had given her a ride, but only to the right alley. and now she was making her own way to the desired house. When she finally arrived, her heart immediately felt lighter. She saw the little house that now belonged to her. Now she would hide here, and no one would hurt her anymore. She opened the creaky gate and entered the yard. Sarah stood for a minute, then slowly closed the gate behind her, leaving all her sorrows and worries behind, and stepped towards a new, yet so unknown life. 2 weeks later, Sarah had gradually recovered. During this time, she got acquainted with her neighbors. They all turned out to be quite nice people. They helped her with the house, found workers who quickly cleaned everything up. The furniture in the house was quite decent, and the yard was also quickly tidied up. Sarah even started smiling because she couldn't react differently to the kindness of strangers. They didn't know her at all. She was a stranger to them, but they did more for her in 2 weeks than she could have expected. Her wounded heart was filled with tears, but the wounds quickly healed from such gentle treatment. And something else happened that made her realize she couldn't hide her profession. She had wanted to give it up, just become some kind of farm worker. She didn't know what else one could do in the countryside, but she intended to find out. But she didn't get such an opportunity. In the morning, her neighbor Martha, who had helped her the most with the house, rushed over. She was agitated and started speaking quickly. "Good morning, my dear. Forgive me, but I won't be able to help you today. I urgently need to go to town. My Lily is very sick. Her stomach has been hurting for a few days, and she got really bad last night. She's constantly throwing up. She can't even drink. I'm a little worried, and we don't have a specialist here. Since the last one left us, they haven't sent anyone else. I don't even know who to turn to. I'm terribly worried about her. She's lying there pale, breathing somehow heavily. Her eyes are wild." Sarah said anxiously, "She's dehydrated. She needs an IV drip urgently. She probably ate something bad, but the intoxication needs to be relieved immediately." Martha threw up her hands. "My dear, you're saying such words. Where would we get an IV drip here in the settlement? And even if we had one, nobody knows how to use it. Our locals can't even give a simple injection. And you're talking about an IV drip. We'll take her to town. They'll treat her there. My precious child." Sarah immediately ran into the house for her medical bag. She had everything she needed. She had taken it just in case, although she hadn't intended to stand out here in any way. She set up the IV drip for Martha's daughter, Lily, and the girl immediately felt better. She was able to drink water. By evening, she looked quite well. They didn't have to go to town. Martha was ready to kiss her hands out of gratitude. The next day, the entire countryside knew that Sarah was a medic. She couldn't hide her profession. Sarah realized that when the girl got better, she felt such joy. And she felt that only medical work brought her such pleasure, something nothing else could provide. And a month later, Sarah was already working at the local medical post, which had been empty for a long time. None of the specialists wanted to waste their lives sitting in a settlement. But that was exactly what she needed, to hide from her past life and be useful to kind and responsive people. Several months passed, and Sarah was called to a girl who had had a fever for a long time. A pleasant-looking man met her. "Hello, doctor. You don't know me yet, but I've heard enough about you. My name is David. Please, help my daughter." Sarah only glanced at the man, noting his beautiful eyes, but immediately pushed away any extraneous thoughts. That's all she needed. Of course, she had been without a man for too long, but not to the extent that a mere look at beautiful eyes would drive her crazy. "Lead me to her. I'll examine the girl." 10 minutes later, she was writing out prescriptions on a piece of paper. "She has bad rattles in her chest. I'll write down the name of the medicine for you now. You'll need to go to town to buy it, and a couple of other medications. And perhaps you could call your wife? I'll tell her how to treat the little one. I have a couple of secrets I can share. The girl will recover quickly." Silence hung in the air, and Sarah looked at the man in bewilderment. He was looking at her, his brows furrowed. After a minute, he said, "I don't have a wife. I'm raising Emily myself." "My wife? During childbirth?" He fell silent, swallowing a lump in his throat. Sarah immediately looked at the fair-haired angel lying in bed. Her blue eyes looked at Sarah so trustingly. She felt her heart clench in her chest. How unfair life was. She had begged her husband for a child, but he didn't want one, probably because he was having an affair with her friend. And Sarah had dreamed so much of a child. And here lay a girl who had never experienced a mother's affection. And it was so painful to encounter such injustice in life. Sarah looked at the man again, and she felt an unfamiliar feeling emerging in her heart. Perhaps sympathy, perhaps anxiety, perhaps an understanding of his pain. And she almost drowned in his eyes, which were looking at her so intently. "You know, I'll come every day then. I'll do everything necessary myself. You just buy the medicine. And I'll make sure Emily gets back on her feet quickly." "Yes, Princess?" Sarah stroked the girl's head, and she smiled at her affectionately. The man also smiled, and Sarah noticed how much father and daughter resembled each other. "I don't know how to thank you. How about I come pick you up every evening so you don't have to walk here yourself?" he suggested. Sarah wanted to refuse such politeness, but immediately changed her mind. She hadn't talked to a man for so long. And this man was so pleasant, polite, and his daughter was such a sweetheart. What bad could happen if he came to pick her up? She would ask him about the girl. She simply wanted to talk to someone other than patients and neighbors. "Okay, I'll give you the address then. I know where you live," the man interrupted her, and then fell silent. Sarah looked at him and saw something in his eyes that unsettled her. A handsome man. But she had already had one like that in her life, who had trampled on her heart. She already regretted agreeing to his coming to pick her up, but there was no turning back. She had suggested it herself. Time passed. Sarah sat on a bench in front of the house, drinking fragrant tea. Strong male arms hugged her from behind, followed by a tender kiss on her cheek. Sarah closed her eyes and smiled. "My love, do you really have the day off today? You are mine and only mine," the man whispered in her ear. Sarah didn't have time to answer before a girl jumped off the steps with a squeal. The man sighed. More accurately, not mine, but ours. Sarah smiled, remembering the events of the past year. It had been the most wonderful time because she had met true love. The man had melted her heart, and it turned out he had seen her much earlier than she had seen him, falling in love with her at first sight. His daughter's illness had brought them together. And it had also been a difficult time because she had to confront her past life. For his sake and Emily's, she wanted to put a definitive end to her past relationships and went back to where she had left her husband and former friend. It turned out they hadn't really looked for her. They were already living together, and signing all the documents was just a formality that needed to be observed. They did everything quickly, without unnecessary questions. While Sarah was sorting out her affairs, Jessica wanted to talk to her, but Sarah didn't say a word to her, and her ex-husband didn't even try to justify himself, only saying that life is an unpredictable thing. Sarah saw them for the last time then. Now nothing connected her to her past life anymore. She could dedicate herself to the man she loved, whom she had met thanks to her relative's little house. She sighed, letting go of the remnants of unpleasant memories. She stroked the man's hand. "We still have so much time. I'll have plenty of time to bore you. You are my life. I love you, and I'll never get tired of you," the man said, holding her tightly in his arms.